What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of hopsgeeknews, your home for comic book news, TV shows, movies, all that good stuff. Once in a while, I can speak words and get my intro correct, but we have a great show for you today as the pop culture connoisseur, our friend Tom Craven, will be coming through to talk about at what point did geek culture kind of turn into pop culture. It's a pretty heated, not really heated debate, but it's a very hot topic lately as when people think about pop culture, we think about comic book movies and all of the like. So it's going to be a great discussion. Make sure you tune in for that and follow him. But first things first, of course, follow us, like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff. Hops Geek News on every social media platform, podcasting platform. If you're here, you probably know that. But make sure you share with a friend. That's how the podcast can grow. And we're gearing up for some cool things. Got some more things to come down the pipe with the Patreons. Probably watching the very first ever Fantastic Four with them here pretty soon. We like to do movie nights with them. So patreon.com/hopsgeeknews is how you can support and then also get ad-free episodes early and all that good stuff. Lauren and I just completed a really good time. 2 weekends actually getting to hang out together. On top of that, next month is our cruise. So we will have our beer of the week. If you don't know the show, beer of the week, talk about what we've been reading or watching, any of the news and things like that. So Lauren, long time no see, even though we saw each other like 3 days ago. But we went to a bunch of breweries through Virginia, and then we met up in Washington, D.C., where I was about ready to just burn the whole city down. And my kids were talking to Carrie that night we got back when we called her, and they were like, Dad was cussing a lot in the car. Yes, I was, because every street was blocked off for rallies left and right. And I was like, God dang it.
And a parade. It was rallies and a parade going on the same day.
It was, but we did some good breweries, man. I mean, we did Smart Mouth, we did Benchtop, we didn't get to the Vale, but we got to do Commonwealth. I took you to Precarious. Your time in Virginia was awesome. It was a lot of fun. The kids had a lot of fun together. And then we also did Aslan, in DC.
That was perfect ending. Aslan at the end of the day, was absolutely perfect.
It was. So that was a good time. But I think you're also waiting till we get to our main topic to drink a beer.
Yes, I have water in my fake beer glass right
now. My
now.
water is a Disney cup that matches my Roosevelt's performance hoodie. I got to talk about them. No, we're not sponsored. Maybe one day they will. My God, I am in love with their shorts, their hybrid shorts. I have their hybrid shorts for like surfing Mickey ones, Jar Jar ones. I bought a bunch of stuff for the cruise, and
I love it.
Most comfortable shorts ever. And then the performance hoodies, I had to get a couple more because I wore my Star Wars one everywhere. And I was like, I really like this Disney Mickey one. And my God, it is the most comfortable thing on earth. I will always just forever wear these. And then Carrie for Father's Day got me the Ahsoka one. I can't have it until Father's Day, but I've been looking for that one for so long. It's been out of stock, and it finally came back in stock, and she got me that. So I'm wicked pumped. Check out Roosevelt's, rsvlts.com. And if you buy something from there, please let them know that we sent you, because I don't know how much longer my kids can go without eating food. And I'm spending like $500 a week on Roosevelt.
Definitely their number one customer.
Seriously, it's what I always rock on the show. But let's dive into what we've been reading or watching. Oh, what do you have?
Say my cups, beer. It looks like beer, and my pants have beer on them. So I'm coordinated too.
You are, actually. You know what? We don't take a time to peep Lauren's fit enough. And
I know. Nobody ever cares what I'm wearing. They just ask what you're wearing.
That's true. I'm very fashionable. But what have you been reading or watching lately as far as comic books and everything else?
So the comic books I reviewed this week for NerdInitiative, the first one was Deadpool and Wolverine World War III from Marvel Comics. I actually read this first issue last month and did not review it. And I had talked about it, that I liked it, but I didn't love it. I felt like there was something missing a little. And this comic I got to review, and I now see where they were going. Because the end, it didn't really make sense. Wolverine was talking about Wade, referring to him towards the end as Deadpool. And then there were breadcrumbs, Deadpool laid out breadcrumbs because he needed help. And so it was very interesting because the help that he needed was drastic. And there was a moment where I'm almost like, okay, have they done to Deadpool what Deadpool had done to him in Wolverine Origins? But they didn't completely skin him alive, so to speak. There were still hints of Deadpool there. And it was really kind of sweet because while you still got a lot of Deadpool and Wolverine going full, savage fighting and everything like that, you got to see a vulnerable side of both of them as well, which I will be shocked if we don't get that in the movie because, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are incredibly good friends. If you watch any of their interviews lately, they are just an adorable
besties,
friendship.
Man.
They are definitely besties. But you see vulnerability in Logan at times, and you definitely see vulnerability in Deadpool at times.
Oh yeah.
So it was really kind of cool to get to see that on the pages too. Obviously, this has nothing to do with the movies, but I've reviewed this too the day that I ordered our Deadpool and Wolverine tickets, so I was just like riding.
Yes. Oh my God. We are getting to watch this movie opening night in London at 8 p.m. at a very fancy movie theater.
It is pretty fancy. Does that mean I can't wear my Marvel pajama pants and bring my Wolverine blanket like I would normally do, though?
You should. Why not? Who cares?
Okay. All right. I guess they're just going to judge us for being Americans anyway.
That's fine. I mean, they're going to judge us regardless, first of all. But yeah, we got tickets opening night, the night before I fly back to America. We're going to go to a nice fancy like bar movie theater and watch Deadpool and Wolverine together in London nonetheless. I don't know why. Like this might be like the one thing on the trip I'm looking forward to most, which is absolutely hilarious.
But that's cool too. It's the last thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's the finale, if you will, of this trip that we're taking. We're starting in Spain and Barcelona together, and we're going to travel to Portugal. Then we're going to end in England. We're taking like a European vacation together. And so to see how far this is our 222nd episode, 4 years now that we've been doing this.
Well, we've done a lot more than that. We've done so many bonus
episodes. Right. So we've probably done closer to 300 as far as bonus, but this is like, I feel as though because July is like our 4-year mark. So I feel like it's a culmination of everything that we've done for 4 years, and, you know, just the friendships we formed through our families and becoming, you know, family, you know it. But it's
more like a family business.
It is. We're in the family
3
business.
years in there. I turned it back to Supernatural.
But I mean, we're getting to end it watching the most anticipated movie of the year in an entirely different country.
I can't think of any movie I've been more excited for.
The only Marvel movie we're getting this year, we get to watch it in theaters, and it features Wolverine's big return in his costume. And yeah, dude, I'm fucking psyched. I am so psyched.
I was writing an article for someone else today, and Deadpool came up, and I'm like, I still can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this.
I'm going to be sitting there this entire trip and just be like, wow. I'm gonna like Owen Wilson all over the place.
Wow. Well, maybe we'll see Owen Wilson. They'll be at the TVA. Who the hell
maybe
knows? But shout out to the writers, Joe Kelly, and the artist is Adam Kubert. So very well-known artist. He worked on the last Wolverine. I actually got him to sign my Wolverine comic. Very exciting. And I also reviewed a comic from Boom Studios called Crocodile Black. So this was issue 2. Ken actually reviewed the one last week. This was actually really cool. It's written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, illustrated by Som, and it's very dark. It's about like a young kid who's definitely not mentally stable. Something terrible happened to his younger brother, but there's like a mystery around that. He sees things that may not be there. He has a mom and a daughter and a sister who are very concerned about him and try to do everything, and a father who is just clearly toxic. But at the end of issue 1, he's delivering groceries. It's during the pandemic. He has a mask on. They even talk about that. He talks about how he likes the mask so people can't see who he is and stuff. And then he goes to deliver groceries, and there is a corpse inside. And he starts to panic and calls the cops, and then he doesn't.
Oh.
And that's where it gets creepy. There's a lot going on. It's very interesting. I'm very much so looking forward to seeing how this develops. How much like where is that snap? Like how much is nature? How much is nurture? Just see, if he had never seen that corpse, could he have lived a normal-ish life? Like,
right.
What made him suddenly snap? Was it always in him? What the hell happened to his brother? You know, one of those that they solve mysteries at the same time they're creating more, which are the best kind of stories because that's how they keep you engaged. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Absolutely.
So those are the comics I reviewed. We haven't really been in town, so I haven't really watched anything. I have been slowly rewatching all the Wolverine stuff, like when I'm on the treadmill and whatnot. I am. Days of Future Past disappeared from HBO while I was in Virginia.
Oh, is it on? It's not on
Disney Plus yet. Amazon's like, you can pay for this. I'm like, yeah, no. Hopefully that means it will be on Disney Plus soon. But
I imagine it should, yeah.
I started Apocalypse. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm saving them for next month because we're going to do a whole episode on it.
That's true. We are. We have watched Doctor Who and the Acolyte. So obviously,
yes.
Monday, actually, Lauren and I will be back on. Well, I'll be back on you watched this past week on Nerd Initiative's YouTube. I was with Tom doing Who in Review for Nerd Initiative YouTube. And then Lauren's going to be on for the finale. And I think I'm going to be on again. And we're going to do like a big season wrap up. Then we watched the Acolyte. So go ahead, watch our Cantina Hour that we go live. We typically each week, we have in the past couple of weeks because Lauren's been traveling, but we like to go live and just keep it casual. So our Cantina Hours will most likely be our Boys episode recaps and Acolyte episode recaps as those go
maybe
through.
Some House of the Dragon.
Maybe House of the Dragon. And then maybe I'll talk about The Bear a little bit, but those are like our TV show recaps, and we just casually have a good time and bring guests on once in a while. But as far as me, I did read some comics. I did Batman Gotham by Gaslight #1 from DC. We're back in 1893 in Gotham City. I really love reading these stories where we get to
1893?
yeah, so, like,
Oh,
I've been
that's
all about the
cool.
period piece Batman. The one I did recently was back in the 70s, and then there was one in the 39, and now this one takes place in 1893, and, it's like the Kryptonian age, so the opening is about, like, Clark or, the Kents on, like, the Oregon Trail, but they're in Kansas, and then that's when Clark crashes, and then it goes to, like, Batman and Cat it's mostly about Catwoman in issue 1, where she
Huh.
basically sets up this gang for Batman, and, Batman makes his entrance and kicks ass. It's really cool how they kind of incorporate, like, 1800s technology into what they're doing. I think it was pretty cool, so go check that out. I read Geiger #3. Obviously, man, Ghost Machine, Geiger, we're big Ghost Machine and Geiger fans from Image. Jeff Johns, Gary Frank, Brad Anderson, Rob Lee. They did this one, and actually in the opening pages, you get a little bit of tie-in to the world at large. There may or may not be a red-coated bumbling buffoon that makes an appearance. And
What? Oh, that's
yeah,
fun. I haven't read
that's
it.
all. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say
They're
about that
really
one.
doing a good job tying this together because they even did
Yeah.
something in Redcoat where I forget what they did, but they tied something together.
Yeah, this Junkyard Joe is basically sent to go find Geiger by our Simon from Redcoat. And without saying more, I won't get into it, but this one's more heartfelt. You get a little bit of behind the scenes into Geiger's mind. And then the last thing I did was Giant-Sized Daredevil by Saladin Ahmed, Paul Davidson, Matt Hollingsworth, and Clayton Cowles. This is from Marvel. It's basically, it's Kingpin's just enraged. He's looking for Matt Murdock. He's trying to just destroy. He's on a rampage. It's very bloody. It's a really, really well done comic book. It's kind of shorter, but it's setting up for a bigger Daredevil story. And then I watched Doctor Who, of course, but I did watch 2 movies. I didn't get to talk about it. I finally watched Fall Guy. Now I'm going to say something that a lot of people are going to be like, well, what about Dune? I'm going to be honest with you. I liked Dune, but I had a blast with Fall Guy. I truly believe that Fall Guy right now is my favorite movie of the year.
It really doesn't matter because that's all going to go out the window when Deadpool and Wolverine comes
out. I mean, yeah, without a doubt. But I mean, Ryan Gosling, dude, I have the biggest man crush on Ryan Gosling. There isn't anything that I will not watch Ryan Gosling do. Take that as you will. But dude, he is so damn good. Aaron Taylor Johnson is actually in it too. And I saw somebody complain that like the plot was too simple or something, and it really wasn't. It was kind of a long movie, 2.5 hours.
Expect it to be deep?
Well, that's the thing, is like it's a comedy. It's about a stuntman who gets injured, and then he has to go and find the actual actor, and there's more to it. I don't want to spoil it because I actually didn't see this coming in the movie, so I don't want to spoil it. Just know that with Emily Blunt, Ryan Gosling, it's a really good movie. I had a lot of fun. Ryan Gosling is great. He's incredible, and he did all the stunts except for lighting himself on fire. His kids only asked him not to light himself on fire, and that's the one thing they asked him not to do, and he didn't do it. So that was really incredible, I thought. Give it a watch, man. I watched it. It's on digital now, so you'll probably have to pay. I can't tell you my methods, but I did watch a new movie that came out on Netflix on the 7th called Hitman. Now, this has Glenn Powell in it. Basically, he's a teacher, this goofy, nerdy guy who helps out the cops on the side, do with like technology and stuff. And this guy who sets up Hitman stings gets caught on camera beating up teenagers and suspended. So Glenn Powell then has to come in and be a pretend hitman, which he absolutely crushes at. So he gets the job, and it kind of spirals from there, and he gets in deep in some things. And really Glenn Powell's acting range in this movie, because he has to dress up as and kind of like pretend to be a whole bunch of different characters because he's a undercover cop. Oh my God. His acting range blew me away. Like his accents, the way he disguised himself, the way he was able to just turn the switch between like really nerdy, goofy guy and just like really suave, handsome, his character Ron. It was so good. Like his acting, absolutely insane. I want to see this man in so many more movies. You know, I've been claiming that I want him as my Hal Jordan. Dude, I cannot recommend this movie enough. It was fun. Absolute fun. It's about 2 hours long, so it's not even a long movie. Watch it. And that's kind of all I've been reading or watching.
All right, well, let's move on to some news.
We do some news real quick. So Catherine Lagaya, I think that's how you pronounce her name, has been cast as the live action Moana. And obviously Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is set to reprise his role as Maui. And I don't know that we still need this movie, but you know what? I'm gonna give this
I
one a
bet
chance.
it's gonna be beautiful because it's the ocean.
And I like Moana, so like this one I'll give a chance. The
Yeah, and
live
the
action,
soundtrack should be good.
yeah. Well, not to mention it's like real humans versus, like the live action Lion King that nobody needed, where it's like
It
weird
doesn't even.
CGI animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then speaking of Disney Plus, the first 7 Saw films are on Disney Plus now. So
Oh, goody.
if you want to have a good family fun movie night, just sit down and let the kids watch. This is what happens if you don't clean your room. Do you want to play a game? That's all I need is my kid to be watching that movie one day when I walk downstairs waking up. And then my last bit of news is that Tim Meadows has been cast in Peacemaker season 2.
I like him.
I do too. Big fan.
All right, so this September on Max, the Penguin series will be releasing. Sony Pictures has acquired Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. It is the first major Hollywood studio to own a movie theater chain in 75 years.
Yeah.
Another thing releasing on HBO Max is Creature Commanders in December. And my last piece of news, which a lot of people are upset about it, I'm not really upset about it. I'm okay with it, is The Boys will be ending with season 5. Kripke has announced this. Kripke said he always imagined 5-season arc. We've 100% heard Kripke say that before. Supernatural went on for 10 seasons after that without him. However, he's on a few of the Then and Now podcasts that I was actually listening to on the way up to Virginia. And he had discussed that he was more involved in season 6 than future seasons, and they would still sometimes reach out to him with certain things. But he said, and he was still a producer, but he said he never went on there because he didn't want to step on people's toes and act like, oh, you're still the producer that's hanging around. But the Boys universe is not going away. Kripke's going to have a great ending, I'm sure of it, for the 5 years, because if you take the first 5 seasons of Supernatural, they are fantastic. And he's going to wrap up, I think, this main 7 story that we've been so invested on. And anybody who's read the comics knows that it is not about the 7. It is about the whole universe. And Gen V is going to continue. We're getting a Mexico spinoff. So the universe is not going anywhere, I don't think. As long as there's an audience, I'm sure they will keep making them, but The Boys will be done in seasons 5. And by the time this episode releases, the first 2 episodes of season 4 are out.
I agree. I liked how he played coy too. It was like, I don't think it's going to end with season 5. We all knew. I've been calling this for how long now that it's going to end with season 5. So
when it came out, I honestly was like, didn't we already know that?
Yeah, but like, how long can they really, like I said, how long can they keep playing this Homelander Butcher game? And it's finally going to culminate. But dude, season 4, it's finally out. It's here. Lauren has some cool stuff out. Go check that out. However, it is time. Our guest of the night, we are going to go to our main topic where our good friend Tom is going to come on and we're going to talk when did geek culture become pop culture? So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a second. Everybody, we're back. Like I said, man, our pop culture connoisseur is here to talk with us. But first things first, man, I promised you guys a beer of the week this week, and Lauren and I have the same beer because I got her this excellent, it's the best themed. It's called Cowabunga from Nighthawk Brewing out of Arlington, Virginia. Dude, this thing, it is exactly what you think it is. It's got pizzas on the label. It's written in the TMNT, font. And dude, it's a good hazy IPA that clocks in at a mediocre 6%. I say mediocre, but that's actually perfect because I don't need anything crazier than that. But it sounds like Lauren just tastes it. So Lauren, quick thoughts. What was your thought on the beer?
It's very good, very easy drinking, very flavorful. I love it. And the can is super fun too. Because we're talking about when did geek culture become pop culture. And I feel like the Ninja Turtles definitely has a little bit to do with that because I don't know that they were ever full on geek culture, but they are geeky. It started.
Ninja Turtles kicked it off in the 90s, man. Everybody loves them some Ninja Turtles. And speaking of Ninja Turtles,
90s? Hold on.
It was 80s.
90s?
Well, for me, it was the 90s. The movies in the 90s for me. Sorry. All right. Well, this man, see, he's already correcting us. That is our handsome.
Because that's the year Matt was born. He doesn't know anything before the 80s or before the 90s happened.
He looks clean. So Tom, what's up, my man? Welcome. What are you drinking over there? And then go ahead and impart some knowledge on us.
Well, let's first off and do this like we normally do. Coming at you live and direct, straight from the Sanctum of Awesome. My name is Off the Cuff Tom, NerdInitiative's pop culture connoisseur. But I am absolutely pleasured to be here with Lauren and Matt on Hopsgeeknews. Now, this evening, what I am drinking, because I am the connoisseur of very many things, I'm drinking a fine Harvey's Bristol Sherry. And for such occasion, I even wore a shirt and tie for these fine individuals. So
You did. This man dressed
When
up.
you
He's
first
fucking
said that, I
good.
thought you were kidding. That's amazing.
Oh no! In fact, as you are a Disney mom, you might recognize Jose and Nick and
tiki
room to the tea. Yep.
I actually
copyright.
have a Ninja Turtle shirt on, which I purchased for the 90s themed Disney run because a lot of people forget that they were at MGM in the 90s.
Oh,
Yes, they were. So were my favorite Power Rangers in the 2000s when Disney owned them for 12 years, 10 or 12 years.
I actually didn't realize the
Oh,
Power
wow,
Rangers
I
were
didn't
ever
Cheers to
know
owned.
everybody.
No,
Cheers.
cheers, you guys. Thanks, everybody coming on. Tom is one of our co-hosts on Turn a Page for Nerd Initiative. He is also a fantastic host where he talks about Doctor Who each and every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Nerd Initiative YouTube channel. So nerdinitiative.com. You hear us talk about it all the time. We are a part of that where collectively each and every week we review your favorite comic books or your soon to be favorite comic books. We're doing a lot of good stuff. So Lauren, we're talking geek culture. When did it turn into pop culture? I know you like to kick us off with a little bit of intro and things like that. So why don't you kick us off?
So, of the top 10 highest grossing movies ever, half are Marvel or Star Wars. So we want to know, when did geek culture become pop culture? The 5 movies, if you are curious, are Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, Avengers, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, a lot of these things, anything Star Wars or comic book related would often be seen as nerdy, geeky, or whatever before, I would say, the year 2000. So I think that this shift began in 2000. However, we're going to go all the way back to the 1940s when comics came in every genre and catered to both boys and girls pretty equally. And now it's funny because, it's not funny. I guess it's interesting. Comic books today, people be like, I have to keep this and I can maybe resell this. And they forget that the reason these comics in the 1940s and everything became so valuable was because some a-hole didn't want to donate it to the war effort because they were donating everything to the war effort. They kept it and then it became valuable because there was only so many left. And so I know, who knows? Being a D-bag pays off sometimes. Probably a lot of times. That's how we get villains in movies. But then come the 1950s, the Comic Code Authority came about, and you had to get the seal of approval that would make parents happy, which meant you had to cater to the man, or many publishers would not publish your book. A lot of kids actually stopped reading comics around this time, including a lot of girls, and vampires were actually one of the words that were not allowed to use. However, Marvel eventually got around that. Thank goodness, or else we wouldn't have had that Morbius movie.
During that time, the printed first word of zombie was ever in a comic book.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, Tom, you've got a lot of things. So why don't you give us your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts? Because we are in this world today that is dominated by discourse of Star Wars and Marvel and sometimes DC, but predominantly, man, like everything being turned into media at some point was most likely a comic book, whether we realize it or not. So what are your thoughts on when this geek culture blended into what we now know as pop culture in the 2020s?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say the 2020s. I would even go far back as saying in, say, 2003, 2008, multiple times we've had writer's strikes where we don't have a lot of people to write the content. They have to fall back on something that is known. And even if you have some scabs or some people who just got to pay their bills, I think that's where we started seeing all these IPs really come out. I mean, let's also not forget when the first greatest, in my opinion, movie of all time, Spiderman, the first one, came out May 2nd, 2002, which was a day that will live in infamy for me for personal reasons. That is the day that I really started to pay attention to geek culture becoming pop culture.
I think a lot of people did, honestly. Yeah. Like Spider-Man really was, we had like Blade before that, right?
Well,
and we had X-Men, but I think
we had we had 2 live action Spider-Man TV series even before that back in the 70s. We had the one in America and we also have the one that was in Japan, of which, our buddy Matt Groom is going to be doing a nod to that in his new book too.
Yeah. That's
right. And that's the one that inspired Transformers.
That's a whole other diatribe. If you ever want to come back and have me on for Power Rangers, that's where I'll start.
Gotcha. But yeah, no, I always think X-Men 2000 because that's what got me into the whole geek world. That's when I fell in love with it and wanted more backstory. But we all grew up with Batman movies constantly and Superman, and these weren't considered geek things. I feel like these were considered pop culture.
Joel Schumacher did nothing wrong.
You're welcome. So true. Well, so in the 1960s,
the Donner cut.
We had Adam West as Batman. Oh, and then put in here Green Hornet, Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. Like, we had DC Comics come in on the screen then, but I think what was different then was this was goofy and cheesy, and it was direct
campy
from the direct from the comics. But like, I feel like until we got Christian Bale, I feel like all of the Batman movies were a little bit of campy. Even the Keaton ones had levels of campiness to them.
You didn't like Danny DeVito walking around in a onesie eating fish?
I mean, I loved it as a kid. I watched it all the time.
Look, we know Lauren loves the bat nips. Let's be honest.
Oh man, those bat nips.
Oh,
look, man,
Keaton is my Batman.
I love the Coolio rave in Gotham City. That's my personal favorite.
I'll take the bat dance any day because I'm old.
Oh, Coolio, we're the same age.
Some ice. Well, I mean, yeah. So I know, Tom, your big day when you first was Spider-Man, but like growing up, what were the things that you were kind of, because for me, I mean, Power Rangers like rocked my world in the 90s. Like I remember waiting in line for hours for the Power Rangers Ivan Ooze movie, for example. I had all the toys for Power Rangers. I was a so that was like my first big introduction. And I think from there that spawned my love into superhero movies, because I was also growing up when, again, I was like 7 when I can't remember off the top of my head, whichever Joel Schumacher was, a George Clooney came out, and that was like my love for Batman until Batman Begins.
Thank you for making me feel old yet again. So for me, believe it or not, it really started with Voltron.
Oh yeah, man.
You know, being an 80s baby, I mean, I was born in 81. I am literally the elder millennial. I am that weird Zennial Gen
He's
X
right there
guy.
after the cutoff, man.
I really am. I'm that very specific micro generation. So I was raised on TV. Let's be very honest. You got home from school, you watch TV, you watch your shows, you try to do your homework. 6 o'clock was dinner. From 6:30 to 7 was, 6:30 to 7 was get your homework done. 7 o'clock in my house was everybody gathered around and we watched Jeopardy.
Oh yeah.
Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. 8 o'clock, finish your homework. 9 o'clock, you're in bed. Kind of idea.
Damn,
so
I wish I could have that routine with my kids. I just don't have the self-control.
But for me, it was also waking up in the morning. You had your Fox affiliate, and particularly my UPN affiliate, showed morning cartoons as well. So they were something for me to get dressed along with. So there were other things like, that's where I remember Samurai Pizza Cats, or just some weird oddball ones thrown
Garfield.
in. Garfield, Heathcliff. I could still remember that theme song in my head. So I was raised on TV. So I was always paying attention, but Voltron is what got me into, big giant robots, and big giant robots led to Power Rangers. And I'll be quite honest, and this is the biggest shocking thing everybody doesn't know, or few people know. I have never been to the actual theater to see a Power Rangers movie until 2017.
Oh wow.
I never, because I was at the ass end of the target demographic. So to be 13 walking in going, oh look, ankle biters.
Look at this bum. Look at this old man who's walking in here, and you'll be 13. I mean, everybody when they kind of think they're too cool for the things that they grew up, or so you don't want to be seen. But now it's cool again, so everything's full circle.
Well, what's interesting is my middle schooler was like, "Aren't your friends like into the Marvel movies?" She's like, "No, they think they're lame or whatever." And I'm like, "Is this just because you're all middle schoolers and you think everything's lame because y'all are lame, or is it that like I don't want people to know that I like them, but because like I thought Geek Culture was pop culture everywhere, but I guess there's still middle schoolers are a lost cause. I don't know. Sometimes she complains about the boys, and I'm like, middle school boys are the absolute worst. You can ask any man; they will tell you middle school boys are the worst.
Middle schoolers are just mean and the worst, period. But
they got the Riz, whatever. Brielle
no, they
does.
don't.
No. So being the world's okayest funkle, I have said something to my nephews at a certain point in their life, and it stands true for about a good 8 years. I love you right now. I just don't like you.
I mean, I'll even say that like straight up. Yeah, like I love you, but just not right now.
Yeah, and the thing is if they're a skin on Fortnite, they're cool all till the next skin comes out. I mean, I've seen that at work. I've opened up my phone and there's a background of a certain character, and they're like, "Oh, hey, that's the guy from Fortnite."
I've noticed that too, actually.
That's
like, sit down, son. Let me tell you something. All right,
yes,
okay.
Back in the old match,
Solo isn't just a skin on Fortnite. He was out.
But then they just call you old.
That's fine.
Of course, you know
I've
that
earned
because you were
these.
born in the 1900s.
Yeah,
That's my daughter says
what
to
was
me.
school like in the 1900s, Dad? Listen here, little asshole.
Like,
We
the
just didn't have
1900s, like-
iPads all the time.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to have calculators till 7th grade.
Yeah.
We had to do it with pen and paper.
Ugh.
Now we have calculators on our literal wrist. I never thought I'd have a watch calculator. That one took me by surprise.
Mhm.
True. You're
but
not always
let's
gonna have a
go-
calculator in your pocket. Well, guess what? Yes, I
You're
do.
right. Well, I do on my on my wrist and on my pocket. So 1970s though, we got the Christopher Reeve Superman and we got Star Wars. So these Superman, I feel like it was always kind of a household name, but Star Wars,
Star
I don't
Wars changed
think
cinema.
was. It did change cinema. So I'm
Oh,
wondering,
yeah.
as we're talking about this, and it's funny because today I was over at a friend's house that I haven't seen in years. I went to high school with, and him, myself, and his son are talking, and his son's almost 15, and he said he doesn't like the first Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi one, because he doesn't like the graphics. And like I think, like, yeah,
I
there's
think they
scenes that look
hold
like
up
a video
decently,
game.
though.
Right. They hold up for us, we think, because it was the year 2002. So we view it
They were
through that
mind blowing.
lens.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like some of this shift also came at the point to where everything looks real now. So you don't have to
Does
suspend.
it though?
Most of it does. And
I've
now
seen some
we
CGI that
nitpick.
looks worse than what we got in 2002. To be honest,
Godzilla
yes,
minus
you have-
one did it on $15 million.
they did. They did.
Marvel does shit for $45 million, and you know they did shit.
Well, I
and
mean,
they're yeah.
but when you're just
Quantumania.
watching it and you're not, nitpicking it, like you go look at the first Star
Multiverse
Wars
of
and
Madness.
you know what? And Last Jedi, The Last Jedi is going to have better graphics. Even if you can still nitpick at things, I'm picking The Last Jedi on purpose just to watch Matt squirm.
I'm gonna give it to the sequel trilogy. I love things like the way that the lightsabers sound heavy. That's one thing that I really love and have loved. Despite that, but I mean, if you ask anybody like what their favorite movie is, in some shape, way, or form, it probably can be rooted back to Star Wars and the way that they shot that movie and the things that they went on in like the studio that came from that. Most of these action movies took hints from George Lucas and Star Wars. So it's like when people are knocking on Star Wars, it's always funny to me because it's like, well, your favorite movie was influenced by Star Wars and your favorite actors are lining up in droves to be a faceless stormtrooper just to say they were in Star Wars.
Oh, hell yeah. I would do
He's
that.
absolutely right. George Lucas is the granddaddy to all of it nowadays.
Well,
And,
when we-
we have to definitely give him his nods.
Yeah.
Mhm.
100% agree. And I mean, going into even the 80s, 89 was Tim Burton Batman, and that's also when Star Tours came to Disney for the first time. And then the 90s, we get a little bit of things like Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man Animated Series, X-Men the Animated Series. It was a good time to be a Saturday morning cartoon for nerds because you got these really excellent shows. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was all the rage. I mean, G.I. Joe was coming up through the 80s. That's another thing. And then really in the 2000s is kind of when we sensed that shift when we talked about. So I would like to hear, Tom, what is your thoughts? When did we kind of turn into because you kind of brought this up and that's what we made it think about a good topic is like, when did this geek culture and pop culture kind of have they merged? And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this.
So let's stick with DC. DC was owned by Warner Brothers, and there was a store way back when in the days when people went to the mall. It's a large building where you
I used
buy
to get
things.
dropped off there every Friday. Oh yeah, we were menaces.
Yep. And you put your quarters up on the cabinet, but that's a whole different spot in the mall. And there were stores like
What?
Spencer's. Yeah, you put your quarters up on the cabinet
For what? Why?
when you go to the
To
arcade.
play the arcade. Okay. I actually
Yeah.
just went shopping when I went to the mall. I went to Spencer's, which is now a porn store.
Exactly.
Well, it kind of was back then too.
It was a porn store when I was
Spencer's
a kid.
has always been a porn. I was in there
Well,
like
I guess
14 years old, like, oh, look at this thing.
I guess I'm more aware now because I'm like, no, kids, we're not going in that store.
You're such a mom. But for one thing that really, sticking in the realm of Warner Brothers, when Warner Brothers used to have the Warner Brothers store,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you started seeing licensed merchandise that you could have in your home. Now, don't get me wrong, Disney's been doing this for years at this point, but everybody kind of classifies Disney as Disney. Even, we didn't technically have the Disney adult back then, but it was okay because it was Disney, because it was American, it was nice, it was this, it was that, it was, it was wholesome. Cross over to Warner Brothers, and then you start having your Batman and your Superman, and you start, your Tiny Toons, Batman Beyond, Batman the Animated Series. You start seeing physical representations of things you can put in your home. I mean, I went to an antique mall the other day and saw this gorgeous Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond statuette for like $75 because somebody wanted to get rid of it. If I had room in here, it would be in here. Obviously,
Yeah.
I don't until that fish tank goes.
Someone get this fish tank out of this man's house.
Seriously, 36 gallons. So it's only 18 now, but that's a different story. So
there
I
fish in
think
it?
that no, they've been moved. He's been moved. His name is Juan because he's the last one. Yeah, I've had this tank for like 7 years. I'm finally done with it. I'm done doing ichthycarry. God knows how many times I've done ichthyside. Anyway, connoisseur words. But when you start seeing that the stuff starts coming off the big screen to the small screen, or from the small screen to your shelves, so that you can have a physical representation of these things, that's what I think when we had the dynamic shift, whether it's posters on your wall or statuettes or your Bugs Bunny mugs or, whatever it was that, they could make half decently in the late 90s.
Mhm.
That's where I think I started really seeing it. I remember my first job at the mall. I was when I'd had to take a break because, child labor laws in the, late 1990s. I'd go down, take a break. I walk all the way down to KB Toys.
Oh my God. I used to live in
my,
KB Toys.
My brother actually worked there.
Nice. And so I would go and hit the aisles to see what figures are out, because when you started seeing these more adult or really good story-based things start to hit, the shelves on the pegs, I go down, I'll take that one. I'll get that one. Oh, there's a Goku. There's a whatever. That's where I started to really, really notice it. So late 90s, early 2000s, I think that's where it really started to hit. And then when you go to like 2003, again, another writer's strike, they had to come up with something and use some sort of IP. So there you go. And let's not also forget that late 80s, in the 80s, Marvel was struggling really hard. That's why we have the Sony movies, because Marvel had to sell off rights to everything. So, hey, we don't have writers. Let's sell something. What do we got? Hey, somebody got Spiderman.
Take a Spider-Man.
Yeah. Give us
Star
Madam Web
Wars?
any day.
Oh God. Thank you so much, Marvel, for being broke, because thanks to you guys, now we had to suffer through Madam Web not once but twice on this podcast. But that is what it is. You're right though. I think for you, the late 90s, me as a kid growing up, I was I was 14 in 2004 when like Batman Begins came out. I think for me, that was like, yeah, we had Spider-Man 1 and 2. We had the X-Men movies. We had those, but I think comic book movies weren't obviously like there.
They were
yet.
hit or miss.
They were a lot of buzz.
We just lived through Madam Web, but
Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes.
Hasselhoff.
Yes. Oh, yes, dude. Oh my God. But I mean, we had Smallville kind of during this period, but like comic book movies weren't what they are today yet. And I think, I don't want to call him like the father of modern day comic book films, but I think what Christopher Nolan did with like Batman Begins was kind of the beginning of like the comic book movie era almost. Cause then the Dark Knight, yes and no, like people were still there. They're really cheesy. And then like Batman Begins comes out and people are like, oh shit. And then that brings us 2008 with Heath Ledger and the Joker and Batman. Obviously Iron Man came out the same year. Those two movies right there really like, boom, it takes off at that point. And then here we go.
I think you're on the same parallel track, but I think that those two different franchises went two very different directions.
Oh, they very much did. Oh,
so Batman Begins brought us adults back around to, hey, we like this.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Iron Man on the other side made it accessible for families. And
people who weren't into comic books or superheroes, like, oh, this is Robert Downey Jr., this is Jon Favreau, this is Gwyneth Paltrow. And I feel like they intentionally cast people who weren't like necessarily known for these types of things. I mean, like, and Robert Downey Jr. was a huge risk in 2008. Yeah. Huge risk.
Well, mine's been a huge risk since the 80s, just saying.
Yeah. Well,
and Iron Man was a huge risk because people didn't know who the hell he was.
That's
like,
true.
I didn't know who Iron Man was.
Popular. People were like, Iron Man. Nobody likes Iron Man. I mean, I knew who he was.
I'm that somebody who did.
I knew
even better.
Yeah.
92. Let's throw back real quick. The Marvel, trading cards.
Yeah.
That brought a lot of people in, especially, your baseball card people, your hockey people who were starting getting annoyed that these were taking over your card shops, your Magic the Gathering guys, all that, to start seeing these pop up in your stores. I mean, people hunting down those 5 holo cards in this first series and 6 in the next series. So we started learning some of these characters that were familiar. So I was like, oh, I want to go see that. And just to see the redemption of RDJ, God love him.
Yeah. And well, to your point though, I think what happened, Batman Begins, before then you didn't see a lot of adults in theaters because then they're like, oh, that's kid stuff. But around 2004 is when adults started to show back up. And then boom, phase 1 kind of comes along in 2008 with the start. And then from there we get Captain America, we get Thor. And then phase 1 kind of made it cool again because a lot of us, elder millennials, younger millennials, like our generation are the big ones. Obviously, they're like, oh, wow, we had this stuff as kids. We remember these toys. We remember these comics. We remember, I mean, sure, like Gen X and to a degree remembered those things. And they are still, I've seen like old people in theaters. Like I love it to opening night for a Marvel movie, but I feel as though like a lot of us are like, wow, we grew up with this stuff and now we're getting to see them on the big screen. It's exciting. And it's really kind of just taken over. And we've seen the Marvel effect of franchises are born out of it. Everything's got to be a connected franchise, a connected story, or unless you're DC, that kind of really fell off the map, of course. But, everything, they're trying to copy that Marvel model. And now Marvel has kind of made,
might you call it?
Well, because of Marvel, we have like these modern day franchises and movies because everybody kind of wants to, they want that success.
In the great words of one of my other favorite YouTube channels, Secret Galaxy, multiverse.
Yes, everybody's got to have a multiverse.
I feel like the multiverse is just an easy like fix it. Like, well, how do you connect this with this? That's not consistent. It's just the multiverse.
Yeah.
But Matt, you mentioned Smallville, so it wasn't just the big screen. Like, Smallville. I didn't watch Smallville when it came out, but I remember like my mom did.
Yeah,
I watched it literally like a year ago. I binged the crap out of it, and I was like,
it was so cheesy.
So cheesy at times, really good at other times, but it introduces so many minor characters. And when you go back to a show like that, the amount of cameos, you're constantly doing the Leonardo DiCaprio moment with all the actors. Definitely, I feel like worth watching. It was a lot of fun. And I had like a group that I would be like, oh my God, this person. And one of my friends is like, I cannot believe you're watching this now. He's like, this is hilarious watching hearing your reactions. But that paved the way for, I think, the Arrowverse. I think that CW was way more likely to be like, yeah, let's do this. So you suddenly had it on free television too. This wasn't cable. This wasn't streaming.
It's a shame we only really had like 3 seasons of Arrow and 2 seasons of Flash. Gosh, what could have been?
I gave Arrow till the end. Flash, I never finished. I never finished anything except Legends and Arrow. I
loved Legends though. Yeah,
I watched every single episode except when they switched over Batman. I tried, couldn't do it. But I watched everything in the Arrowverse from start to finish.
Still watching Superman and Lois. That show's good.
Oh yeah, there were must-watch TV. I remember like, hey, I got to sit down. I hadn't sat down the second the show premiered in years. Like I think Dragon Ball Z on Toonami was the last time I did that. And so I was in the military, obviously, and so like at work, I'd be like, oh shit, my shows are coming on. I throw it on the TV while we had nothing going on, and boom, I was plopped right on that couch every Tuesday night.
Your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. Look, you want to know what your tax dollars is? That defense budget, it's going to me watching Arrow and Flash when that was a thing.
But the CW too, though, you could stream it the next day for free. So they keep like their last 4 episodes or something. So like if you couldn't afford any streaming services or something like that, like but
I didn't have cable. That's why I wanted to work.
But I remember like sitting down like with my daughter, she'd have like a hot chocolate, and this is the oldest, the only one that would actually watch stuff with me. And we would sit down and we watched it. We got into Flash first, because actually here's your Stan Lee cameo. Tim is the one that told me I needed to watch Flash. So I watched Flash, and of course then I was like, well, I'm going to go watch this Arrow show now. And so Kaylee and I would sit down, and the next thing we knew, we're 4 nights in a row at 8:00 at night. We're sitting there watching a different show, and we watched Crisis every night in a row to be like, I know, not my 2 younger ones. No fucks to give, man. Last night, I'm like, really, watch the Acolyte with me? And Brielle's like, no. And then she sat there on top of me. Anyways,
I guarantee you, if I asked Brielle if she wanted to watch the Acolyte, she would say yes, because I feel like we really bonded, became friends. But
probably on your couch, she'd just fall asleep. Matt has a magical couch that puts children to sleep.
Guys, I promise you, it's not like that. Chris Hansen, turn around.
But this was really
like really scene in Friends. I need a couch that says "Children welcome," but also come here. Like what? Sorry.
This was really smart about DC and Warner Brothers at this time, because they realized Marvel ruled the big screen.
Oh yeah.
They had their movies. They tried hard, but what they were doing on a consistent basis on the small screen was perfect. And I think that this was a great gateway because it was so accessible to everyone that's when con cultures, particularly I will say Wizard World, which is now Fan Expo, is when it really came to the forefront. I know around that time, my girlfriend, now happily married wife, whom we're celebrating our anniversary next month, actually 1 month and 1 day from today, as of this recording, we had gone to it was our first, getaway together. We went to Philly. We went to my hometown and we did Wizard World and we did the whole nine. Like we met Amel. I have pictures galore just buried away. We went to the Knocking Point Winery party that they had at what used to be, when I grew up, was the Spaghetti Warehouse, which had turned into a venue. And now it's a place called Milk Boy, which is another venue. But I think that's really where I started to see it, because being immersed in the culture was one thing, but when you were standing in line for a photo op and you could see a cosplayer 5 people up from you, and then you see your pumpkin spice basic bitch, and then you see me and my wife, like we've got like matching shirts on for the day, like we're
my wife
incognito nerds.
Pentacon ones, our
I was the basic bitch.
Our baby announcement for our firstborn son, we went around and had everybody hold up the onesie, different Batman, because it was a Batman onesie, and we had different like Batman villains holding up this onesie, and that was our baby announcement. Anyway, sorry, Tom.
Oh, that's adorable.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
Great.
We made our firstborn the morning of before I went and met David Tennant for like my first ever Comic-Con, which is even better.
So you're saying your wife saw your sonic screwdriver?
She did, and that sonic screwdriver.
Wait, I thought it didn't work
be
on
careful.
wood.
But yeah, our baby announcement was they were holding up the onesie. I think I still have the picture somewhere. I'd have to get it, but that was
awesome.
That was our big thing, man. And he's named Oliver after the Green Arrow. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and pulling it back around to Doctor Who, that came back on in 2005, and bringing it back to the whole nostalgia thing. It's like you go to Disney World or Magic Kingdom any day, the line for Peter Pan is insanely long. They've only have touched up like their faces a few times and added a queue, and that line's always insanely long because it's one of the original rides. It's the nostalgia. It's the parents going, I rode this ride as a kid and now I'm making you go on it with me. So Doctor Who came out in 2005. Totally off the wall show. I knew nothing about it. And as soon as I started watching it, my mom's like, oh my gosh, you're watching Doctor Who? Your grandmother watched that. I never knew that. I also feel like there was like a shame that people have like gotten over. Like I didn't know
they used to hide that they would do this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, the friend I was talking to today, it was funny because he read comic books in high school and none of us knew. We didn't find out until years later when these Marvel movies came out and he knew who Thanos was. And we're like, how the hell do you know who Thanos is? Like, he's like, oh, that guy's Thanos. And we're like, what are you even talking about? He was in the closet reading comic books.
So what's interesting, and if we're going to talk high school and whatnot, for me, I had the Weeb before Weeb was a thing in 1996.
Oh, yeah.
Weeb, W-E-E-B.
Okay,
back in 1996. She actually lives in Japan now. Like she went and she's a translator in Japan. Like you want to talk Sailor Moon and everything, and back up, in the name of the moon, I will punish you. I like Sailor Moon. I had the CD soundtrack.
Sailor Moon was a bop, dude.
You should get the soundtrack, the original Viz Media soundtrack.
Harry, my wife loves Sailor Moon, so we might actually have it somewhere.
So you keep going, and there were some of us, and I was a choir nerd and a band geek.
You say that like you're never nudes.
And
There's
I did
tens of us.
And I did the thespian thing, so we had a very unique bunch of individuals. In fact, for us, those who did like the sports and stuff were the oddballs in our group. My other buddies, they were the computer club, the chess club, this, that, and the other thing. So the nerd culture was around me. But it was there. And then like when I got into my 20s and joined the military and then went out west, and I was a closeted nerd for many years. And the only big thing I watched was Doctor Who. My ex-wife, I remember the night Doctor Who came back on with that first episode, Rose. She peeked her head out of the bedroom and go, I'm going to bed. Me, I'm like,
me like 3 tries to get through that first episode. I'm like, what the hell is this? I watched Torchwood first.
Oh,
so I was like,
I'm
okay.
sorry. You were all sorts of
I like
backwards.
Torchwood.
Interesting how that is what got you in, because Torchwood is what like a lot of people like turned off.
Arrow led me to go to the Malcolm.
Oh,
what's his name in
yeah,
Arrow?
yeah.
Well, John
Oh,
Barrowman's sexiness
John
right
Barrowman,
there.
yeah. And I'm like, why are so many people here to see Malcolm Merlin? I was surprised. And then he comes out and like in the most gorgeous way ever because he's freaking fabulous. And that's when I learned about Torchwood and Doctor Who. But at one point, my friend and I who were there, I look at him and he looks at me because Kaylee was like 12 at the
I
time. And I'm
look
like,
at
do we need to
him.
take Kaylee out of here? Because this is getting real inappropriate. But so I watched Torchwood first. And then I was like, well, now I have to watch Doctor Who. But that first episode is like, that was a ballsy of them to make that the first episode. Like they were just like, this is what this show is. We're going full in. We're not
It had
holding
been
back at all.
8 years, I believe, at that since we had the Paul McGann BBC Fox crossover movie, which I watched. I remember vividly watching, sitting on my couch at home back in Philly, with nobody around. Like my dad didn't get it. My dad was never a pop culture person. He was never a
Neither is
comic
my
book person.
dad.
He grew
No.
up. He was born in 42. He was a very different person. He respected that I liked these things, but he never took the time to understand them. And that's okay. My mom,
Yeah.
on the other hand, was like, yeah, what can I do to nurture this?
Right. My mom's a geek. My dad is like, oh, we played Star Wars Cantina song during the halftime show when he was in college. That's always what he tells me. That's his like claim to fame. But he even tells me, he's like, I'm really sorry I don't watch the geek show, but he watches the beer shows. He's into beer. Meanwhile, my mom was a closeted geek forever. And like she wasn't as open about it until later. And my brother has even said that, like, why does mom collect all these toys now? I'm like, because it also was not acceptable.
Yeah.
Then, like, I remember her telling me in my early 20s in my first apartment, you know, I had Kaylee when I was 20. So, you know, I'm 23 with my first apartment. That math is not correct. I was born in 83. So I'm 20 years old in my first apartment with a newborn and I'm decorating it all Winnie the Pooh. And my mom's like, you know, eventually you have to buy some grown-up stuff. If you go into her house now, she has like Boba Fett framed in the living room. Like she's got toys.
I have a whole comic room. As soon as you enter my house, you saw, Lauren, my whole entire like, comic room,
which is
like,
lovely. I love
look at us. Like, look at our backgrounds right now. Like, this is what it's like. It's crazy.
I mean, I have Star Wars rugs in the kitchen.
My wife and I have gone through phases since we've moved in together. Our first apartment was very okay. We're grown-ups. You didn't see much. By the time we moved into our second place, again, very grown-ups, but a few little hints and nods there. By the time we started really like playing video games. And again, when Arrow came out, because we watched it religiously, okay, a few of my video game things or this and anything. Skylanders was a game that we absolutely loved. So we started collecting the figures, and the figures would stay out all the time because we had to constantly use them if you're not familiar with the game series. So that kind of gave me the foot in the door to start decorating nerdy. When we moved to our fourth place, because the third place was we returned to ghetto chic. I will never live in that building again, and God help anybody who ever does. But by the time we moved to our fourth place, we had so many Skylanders, and we really started wearing it out in our house a little bit more. And I had an office that I had a little shelf. I still actually have the shelf that I used, but it's covered with so many figures. I mean, you guys have seen in our Discord what my office looks like. I mean, there's not a flat surface that doesn't have stuff. By the time we got to our where we've been for the past few years, we started off very adult thing, and oh well, here's a little figure of Mickey here, and here's a thing of that. And she's finally gotten into One Piece, all 1,000 episodes. So I've got mystery minis out on the shelf in the living room. We've got all the crazy cat lady stuff. We've got the Stitch Feed Me series hanging in our kitchen. Like we actually put figures in certain places of our house where it makes sense. Like I've got Chicken McNugget pops in the kitchen. They're not going to be in the office.
Our salt and pepper shakers are Batman, Robin, Stormtrooper, Darth Vader, TARDIS, and stuff like that in our kitchen.
Exactly.
Mine are Little Mermaid and Mickey Mouse.
Exactly. So I think that when going back to, like I said, when they started doing merchandising to fill your home, that's when it started to become more acceptable. I also think that with the change in generation, and I'm going to talk societal real quick and outside of geek culture, when 30 became the new 20, 40 became the new 30, and everything has changed by a decade, you know, that's my opinion. You know,
I agree.
I agree. I still feel like I'm 20 and I'm about to be 34 soon, and I still feel like I'm in my 20s. So
exactly. I still drink like I'm in my 20s and I'm in my 40s.
I definitely do. And then I throw up in front of my kids as I'm driving down the highway.
I don't drink like I'm in my 20s because I drank shit beer in my 20s.
Yeah. Oh, I would. Well, again,
I lived off of beer last week.
But I
true.
think that that's when things started becoming more okay. I think that the boomers and the Gen Xers that grew up, that they had to stay in a very certain line
Mhm.
based on what their parents brought them up with. And they said, well, I'm not going to be like that as a parent.
Back
That's
in my
what
day,
gave
we went to
us.
war. We didn't play with toys. I'm like, Dad, my Star Wars are at war.
Yeah, I think that gave us, when they said, well, we're not going to be like our parents, gave us the carte blanche to be able to be who we are today.
Yeah.
So
Well, and like, my mom told me when I was in high school, like I still collected Winnie the Pooh and Lion King figurines were all over my room. Every boyfriend I ever had bought me Winnie the Pooh stuff, which is funny. Josh bought me a Winnie the Pooh when I was 18. It's in our room. It's the only geeky thing I'm allowed to have in our room is shit he bought me.
I'm not allowed to have any in our room either. It's okay. That's why I got this.
That's the one thing I'm not allowed to decorate for the holidays or do any geek stuff in there, but I have the Winnie the Pooh in there that he bought me. And my dad actually asked my mom, like, is this normal behavior? Like, should she still be having these? Like, and I wasn't playing with the toys in high school. I was just decorating my room with Winnie the Pooh Beanie Babies. And a bunch of them are in here right now. And
Sure.
it's funny because my dad wasn't into it. He was born in 58, so he's younger than yours, but he was just never into any of it. He wasn't into any sort of like pop culture. It's funny, like he's big into Game of Thrones and stuff, but if I bought him a Tyrion pop, he'd be like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, but Game of Thrones
and
is
put it in
very
the shelf.
adult.
But I'm just saying, like in the regards of like the things that he's into, he's only seen the Thor movies for Marvel, and that's because we have Scandinavian heritage. So he's got the Nordic compass
Oh, that's
tattooed on
cool.
his leg. But yeah, he's not into any of that. But I feel like our generation made a demand for that. I mean, I'm sure those two fed off of each other. We're like, oh, people are of a certain age are still buying these things. Let's start selling how, because I remember one of the first things I ordered for my first apartment outside of my dorm was a Winnie the Pooh lamp for my living room that was subtle Pooh Bear. And yeah, it just kind of, yeah.
I remember like my parents are in their 50s. So like my dad's like a metalhead. He grew up playing bass, metal bands, all that stuff. My mom's a hairdresser. My mom's like not a nerdy person at all. But the other night my dad loves Star Wars, obviously, but they started texting me like asking questions about the Acolyte. Like, hey, how does this play into Star Wars? All this, they watch all the Star Wars stuff. My mom loves the Acolyte. And this is someone who like isn't into that stuff at all. But like now here she is, she sees that I'm into it. And I think that's also gotten her kind of into it because like my brother's kind of into it. Not so much my sister, not really. I'm the nerdy one of the family. They're all like vastly different personalities, but I think because like I'm so avidly into this stuff, my mom sees us, obviously we're doing lives, she comments all the time, she pops in.
Hi, Mom.
Well, yeah, she'll probably, hopefully she's on the canteen hour I'm doing after this, but she like will watch these shows and then she texts me about them, and it's like a really cool bonding thing. And then going into like video games, my wife's dad, he's in his 60s, he's like this all about guns and all this manly stuff. But here we are, Friday night, 2 a.m., playing Helldivers together and just bullshitting along. And it's like, it's really cool because it's like these bonding moments. Because I'm adopted. So I was around long enough with my birth parents that like bonding to us, like I didn't bond with them. They like, it was constantly like a very bad household. So like, it's interesting now that like I'm bonding in this way. And then I do it with my kids where I take the kids, they're very much like my daughter wants to be Princess Leia or Rey. My son's very much into Legos and in Star Wars and Marvel. And it's just interesting kind of how these generational shifts happen. And then here we are, like modern day pop culture has risen to, man, we got Lauren and I are going to go see Deadpool and Wolverine the opening night. And our spouses, like my spouse is into this stuff. Josh, not so much.
He likes
but
the movies, though.
He's going with us. And there we are. We're going to go opening night together. And it's just really cool to see how it brings us all together now versus when we were younger. It was one of those things that we had to kind of be quiet about. And maybe we missed out meeting our best friend because of that. And now here we are. I've met some of my best friends on this planet because we're allowed to talk about it openly,
Well, I feel like Josh is a great example of geek culture turned pop culture because he's the younger of two other brothers, and his two older brothers played like Dungeons and Dragons and would have like sleepovers all weekend and do that. So to him, they were always, the nerdy older brothers. I mean, granted, his middle brother is now his best friend, but so Josh was never like into that stuff. But
what the fuck?
Well, after last weekend, he's definitely your best friend. You want to hear the cutest fucking thing ever? Josh had one of our Hopsgeeknews shirts on this weekend, and Matt's son asked my husband, "Did you buy that shirt from my dad?" That's so cute. But some of Josh's go-to movies to like, oh, I'm just going to fall asleep to this is like Black Panther is one of his favorite movies. Like he will put those movies on all the time. He watches Walking Dead. He's watched, he asked me the other day, why didn't you tell me House of the Dragon was coming back on this month? And I'm like, well, you should listen to Hops Geek News. We mentioned it on there. But
Josh.
I think he's a great example of like, he's only into the very popular sort of pop culture stuff that is still sort of geeky. Like he's never read a comic book, doesn't watch any Star Wars, but yeah, that's what it is. But I think a big shift was a couple things. One, I think anytime Disney buys something and you can merchandise the crap out of it and sell it all over the park, I think that is a big one when it turns pop culture. These are sideways. And yeah, well, I'll let you talk about that for a minute too, because I didn't even know that. Tom just showed me a Power Ranger. And another thing, I think streaming helped because it was a lot easier to
accessibility.
Yeah.
And like talking about Arrow, it's like it's harder, not every episode starts with previously on and sums it everything up perfectly so you can just watch that standalone episode. Every problem's not solved in a 40-minute long flash episode. Like sometimes you got to keep watching. So I think that made a big difference as well.
Agreed. And well, because you were going to point out Tom, the Power Rangers, let's get our final thoughts on this entire subject as we start to wrap up. Tom, final thoughts into this topic we've had. Anything that you're kind of still thinking about?
I think it just comes down to the whole generational thing at this point. Those of us who were born in the early 80s, 90s, and so on and so forth. Again, like I said, when it finally became more socially acceptable to enjoy these things later in life, and all these companies started buying in or selling or giving us the product, and especially with the output of media today, that it's all in your face, is what really changed things. One big thing, and I know we didn't talk about it, just that I also think it was a dynamic shift, was Big Bang Theory.
Oh God, I hate that show.
As much as you might not enjoy the show, and I've only seen an episode here to there, so on. I think that at that point CBS was doing such a really good job with sitcoms, particularly How I Met Your Mother, which again,
that's my favorite.
It really is, and I could go on a whole other 20 minutes about just that show alone. But when
we'll
CBS
have you back
really
for that show, because I've been wanting to talk about it, but
trust me, if you come back, it'll be legend.
Wait for it.
We're gonna wait. Nope, we're gonna wait for it till I come back.
Oh God, that's like it's just a patient. You have to say it. I have to say it.
Say it. But again, like I said, I think that when we had the generational shift and the social okayness of things is when we started having the whole thing of passing down the legacy of these things. And when it became more socially acceptable. I could even go on and tell you the story about my dad on that particular Spiderman movie, but I know we're getting close for time, so I'm just gonna leave that at that and tell you guys later because it's a sweet story.
I love sweet stories. Lauren, do you have any final thoughts?
I do have a couple more things I want to mention. Walking Dead, I feel like that was a big thing too, because myself included, this was the first comic book I read from beginning to end. And I think that was the first comic book a lot of people picked up. I have friends who are not into
my brother.
Geek Culture at all.
We read that together.
Yeah, Tracy reads this comic. I don't think she's finished it, but I know she has a bunch of them. And so anything to get a new, generation to pick up comics, not a new generation, but a generation that never picked up a comic book before to pick up a comic book. I think that's helped. And I'm going to go back to Disney. Disney bought Star Wars in 2012. They opened Galaxy's Edge in 2019. Disneyland opened Avengers Campus in 2021, and Cosmic Rewind came to Epcot in 2022. I think those were all big milestones in just making this more just common American culture, honestly. And also 90s cons are showing up, and all these different cons that are considered geek. I think it's a gateway drug to ending up in San Diego. And the last thing I want to mention, which I thought was very interesting, Matt and I actually were at the Smithsonian in DC this couple days ago, and we saw stuff for Star Wars. We saw stuff from Marvel. Captain America's shield was there from one of the movies. We saw R2-D2 and C-3PO there. And like these things are ending up in the Smithsonian. And Rocket Raccoon is a household name. There's not a single kid out there. Not literally. The majority of kids, I feel like nowadays see
Raccoon. Like, do you know Rocket Raccoon is? And their parents are gonna be like, get away, stranger.
We had like 4 raccoons in our backyard one day, and they were all named Rocket.
I live 2 hours from Rochester, so there's actually the Strong Museum of Play, which is the World Video Game Hall of Fame. It's also the American Toy Hall of Fame. And I just went for my 42nd birthday, and I felt like I was 8 years old again, and it was I had a sense of wonderment that I had not had in a very long time, since probably the last time I walked through the gates at Disney World. Another thing, if you think about it, is down in New York City, there is the Theater of the Moving Image, which has a whole separate wing dedicated to Jim Henson. And if you also think, that was also a perfect idea of, puppetry. The Muppets even made it okay, because they started off used as a vehicle for selling things. And then you had Sam and Friends, and then you had sex and violence on TV. Then you had the Muppet Show. It made it accessible and made it socially okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's true.
I could talk about stuff off forever.
Me too. Well, we're gonna have to do a part 2 to this, I think, because there's still a lot more to say. But in the meantime, since we are getting short on time, Tom, why don't you go ahead and let people know where they can find the pop culture connoisseur?
You can find me everywhere on the internet. I know that Matt is going to do his due diligence and put all the little links and everything and QR codes all wherever it's going to be, up here, down there, over there, wherever it's going to be. Off the Cuff Tom. Just Google it. You will find me. You'll also find me every single Monday night on Nerd Initiative's TV Talk. And with the exception of 3 or 4 nights, you'll see me on Turn a Page every single week. Like, I'm glad you guys did last night, because I had no idea what you were talking about.
Oh man, yeah, we did talk some wrestling. A really great guest Diego was, with the Luchaverse coming out. Check that out. Nerd Initiative YouTube, nerdinitiative.com. We do each and every week. I'm over there. Turn a Page. Lauren and I are going to be on TV Talk with Tom, talking about the Doctor Who finale and wrapping up the season.
Matt was last. Wait, oh, sorry, my camera's mirrored. Matt was last week. Lauren's next week, and then I'm going to have every one of my companions come back for the season finale.
Got to put a nice bow on it, man. And
y'all had a good one to discuss. Oh my goodness.
I know that was a good episode, really good. But our reviews are out at New Comic Book Day each and every Wednesday. If you don't know what you want to pick up, man, check out our reviews on, Tom's Twitter, our Twitter, hopsgeeknews, or even Nerd Initiative's Twitter or anything like that. We're sharing our reviews out, and more than likely there's most of the time we put out like 20 plus comic book reviews. So there's bound to be something that you can pick up that you're going to like. I promise you that. I will put my name to it right there. There's going to be something. And we were doing big things here with the podcast. Like I said, we're coming up on our 4 years. Lauren and I are getting ready to do some really cool stuff. And then Nerd Initiative, man, has been a godsend. It's been absolutely fun. The things that we've gotten to do, the things that we get to talk about, Tom. So check out Nerd Initiative.
And the people you've met.
Yes. It's been amazing, man. So go ahead, do us a favor, do that. Let us know what pop culture things or geek things did you grow up with that now is like a household name, if we've missed any? And where was your defining moment for a lot of this stuff? Coming kid full circle. Let us know. Make sure you follow this handsome devil down here. And we will see you guys next week, where we are going to be talking with Richard Nebbins, our friend from the MCU Direct, because it's the 30th anniversary of The Lion King. So, we're going to be talking about The Lion King. Scar. Make sure
it's time.
Like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you on the plains of Africa next time.
I'm out.